Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the MinuteMan Weather Summer 2021 Crop Outlook. My name is Kailey Carey, and I'm a senior meteorologist here at MinuteMan Weather. And below is just kind of a look at what we're going to be breaking down for you today and really kind of diving into that long-range seasonal outlook and everything we took into consideration to really kind of give you those yields or the projected yields for each crop throughout this season. Something we tend to focus on here at MinuteMan Weather is change. We're focusing not only on change from model run to model run, but also in those end zone numbers, what we've looked at from last summer compared to this summer. And something that I'm really into and like to focus on are the change in teleconnections that we've seen from season to season. We use our insight on this change to focus on primarily agriculture and energy as well. Let's jump into this right now. Now, this is what the National Weather Service is offering for June, July, August in their forecast. Above average temperatures out west. No surprise, they have been seeing a lot of warmer temperatures along with the lack of rainfall. So that dry ground mixed with the warmer weather, it's not going to improve much from here. We're going to continue to see those warmer temperatures linger throughout the summer months and even on into fall. Now, something that we're focusing on is this kind of, you can see in the middle portion, well, across the Corn Belt, you're looking at Iowa and Missouri and Illinois as well. And that region, we're looking at near average temperatures. And a lot of that has to do with the amount of rainfall we're anticipating to continue to make its way up that portion. And that is going to be very beneficial for the Corn Belt. Above average temperatures likely out east as well. And once again, no surprise as we move deeper into summer with that one. As we start to transition deeper into summer on into early fall, we're really focusing on the forecasted ENSO outlook. Currently, we're in a neutral phase, but we are forecasted to gradually start to go back into a weak to moderate La Nina. And the temperatures that we're seeing here for that late summer, early fall are very indicative of this. Let's talk precipitation. Now, this is what the National Weather Service has for June, July, and August. And they're looking at above average precipitation up in the northeast and then kind of making its way down into the east coast of Texas and below average precipitation over towards the west. And once again, that below average precipitation out towards the west is no surprise. That is something that we've continued to see from season to season, even carrying over from last summer due to that lackluster monsoon season we are seeing across Arizona. Now, the main change that I think that we could possibly be seeing with this would be an increase in moisture, more so across Texas, and seeing that green expanded a little bit further west into the Corn Belt. And that's because we're currently sandwiched in between these two systems. We have basically, it's called a trans-ridge gap in between the Sonoran Heat Ridge and the Bermuda High. And those two ridges have not strengthened enough yet. We're basically seeing a surplus of tropical moisture kind of make its way on into the state of Texas. And that tropical moisture is making its way all the way up into the Dakotas onto the Canadian prairies as well. And as we're seeing disturbances make their way across the country, we're seeing an influx and excess rain make its way across the central portion of the country as well. Now, Texas has seen plenty of rain, but if you are monitoring the Dakotas, you know that much more precipitation and moisture is needed in that area to benefit crop production. So that is something that we could be looking at change-wise moving on. Looking deeper into summer on into early fall, the National Weather Service still has above average precipitation forecasted for the southeast, and that's primarily due to the anticipation of a very active hurricane season heading our way, and then below average rainfall anticipated out west. Once again, no surprise there. The main change, though, that could possibly be seen with this map is the push of that green line or possibly above average moisture a little bit further west, because that trans-ridge gap I was speaking about on the last slide, that gap is anticipated to kind of shift a little bit further east as we start to get later into those summer months. Now, current drought monitor that made its way out this week, a lot of changes were actually seen. Texas improved quite a bit, and that's a lot of that's due because of all the rain that's been making its way up from the Gulf into this region as well. One area that has improved slightly is North Dakota and South Dakota. I know it doesn't look like it because there's still a lot of red there, but believe it or not, that is less red than what was there last week. And so hopefully they are anticipated to see some possible storms make their way through the next couple weeks or so, that extreme drought that's being seen in that region starts to alleviate somewhat for that portion. One area we're really starting to focus in on still, and we've been monitoring this for a while now, is northwest Iowa. Now, there have been a lot of improvements in that region, but we need this current rain that's forecasted over the next couple of weeks or so to come to fruition to really start to alleviate drought-like conditions in that region as well. And one area that's kind of new on this map, and we're going to talk about as we start to move forward, are the Carolinas. Now, they have seen a lack of rain over the last couple of days or so, but more rain is on the way. So hopefully, notice that S over that region as well. That is showing that is a short-term drought is anticipated. So hopefully this forecasted rainfall does come to fruition, bringing them some much-needed relief. Looking at the drought tendency forecast, this is kind of what is anticipated to happen over the next 30 or so days. And there is a lot of positive to this map. And when I say that, there's a lot of green. And that's primarily in the growing areas. Once again, out west, drought is going to continue, no surprise. That's going to probably continue on into next year as well. But I do want to point out the green that we're looking at across the Dakotas, across Iowa, across the Carolinas. That is going to be very beneficial for what is being planted in those regions. Cotton in the southeast, and then corn and soybeans a little bit further up north. Now, we're going to talk about the CANSIFS model. This is the Canadian Long Range Seasonal Outlook. Now, I'm pulling this up because it's really starting to pick up on the amount of tropical moisture that's going to be pulled in between this trans-ridge gap I keep talking about. So think of it almost like a juice box. All of that moisture in the Gulf is the bottom of the juice box, and it's kind of being filtered up a little bit further north. For June, July, and August, we're anticipating the gap between these two ridges to slowly shift further east. If you look at our past 30 days, you'll see that a lot of this moisture is more across the central portion of the country, but eventually we are anticipating this moisture shift to make its way a little bit further onto the eastern corn belt, which once again will be beneficial for crops in that region. And it might get a little soggy down the delta just because of all of the rain that is anticipated. Moving deeper into summer, you can see that those rain chances really kind of hang around across the Gulf Coast, and that's because with that weakness in those two ridges, that trans-ridge gap, tropical activity is going to kind of be funneled into what I would say the juice box. It's going to be funneled in across these areas. Let's talk soil moisture. So end of June, out west, it is not looking good, and up in the Dakotas, not looking too hot either. But believe it or not, a little bit better than what it was last month. Now, I do want to point out Louisiana and Mississippi. Notice how it is extremely saturated. So we will continue to monitor that region for excess rainfall and tropical activity as well. With the start of hurricane season being June 1st, wouldn't be surprised if we start to see some activity this month as well. Now, when you start to look at July, a couple things start to pop out at me. We're looking at, you can see that yellow in the Dakotas, it's really kind of starting to decrease. Even though the lighter yellow is making its way further south, the darker yellow is retreating somewhat, and it looks like that will be beneficial for South Dakota. And the greens aren't quite as dark along the Gulf Coast, so hopefully meaning that by the end of July, things start to dry up somewhat, as long as too much tropical activity doesn't make its way through that region. Let's talk hurricane outlook. We are forecasting an above average season with an increase in activity throughout the Gulf, and that's primarily due to the gap between the Bermuda High and the Northern Heat Ridge as we head into June, eventually seeing that gap shift a little bit further east, but all in all, it looks like the Gulf could be a hot spot this season, as well as the East Coast. Now, Florida, we always continue to monitor, but the way the ocean temperatures are lining up and the way that the weather patterns are lining up, it looks like these two areas could be seeing a little bit more activity than the rest. A lot of the projections that we've been talking about throughout this slideshow have been derived from our current ENSO number, which is at a negative 0.03. And that falls on the scale of neutral, ENSO neutral. But a lot of times when we see a strong La Nina, which is what we just made our way out of, it's kind of followed up by another La Nina year. And that's kind of where we are. We're in that transition of a strong La Nina going back to neutral for a brief moment in time, and then models are anticipating a weak to moderate La Nina to return as we head into fall. So taking all this information into account, below are similar June, July, August years that we used when coming up with possible crop yields. Now, let's talk about crop impacts. Now, what we basically did is we took those analog years, we looked at the yields from those years, and then we looked at the departure from the 10-year average, and then within that, we compiled a projection. Now, so currently, it looks like we could be looking at an average to above average corn yield for this year, because about 81% of the selected June, July, August years did have above average corn crop yields. So all in all, it's looking good for corn as we move forward into this season. Now, soybeans, this information suggests a near average year, just slightly above, and that looks like it's going to be holding true. The only region that we're really going to have to monitor will be the possible of excess moisture down in the southern delta, just due to all of the rain they've already been seeing this season and the potential for increased tropical activity in that region as well. Now let's talk about cotton. Now, when we look at these analog years, we did have to go ahead and take out the year of 95, not just because the number was just quite a bit different than what we were seeing, but that was also the year of the insect infestation, and that had a great impact on the yields that year. So we didn't conclude 95 in our final numbers, but overall above average cotton crop can be anticipated this season just due to our projected numbers. So 63% of the selected June, July, August years resulted in above average cotton crop yields. But once again, we will be continuing to monitor the Carolinas just due to the current drought-like conditions they're experiencing, but we are anticipating to see those conditions improve as we get further on into the season. Spring wheat. Now we're looking at near normal spring wheat yields moving forward. This is no surprise. Everything's been going smoothly so far, and 54% of those selected years did have above average results or yields for spring wheat. Winter wheat. Now this is definitely something that we're going to be continuing to talk about moving forward. Now, it looks currently that below average winter wheat yields will be possible this year, not only because of what we're looking at currently, but also from the analog years that we pulled and the numbers that we're looking at. Even though it's only 55% of the selected June, July, August years that were below average, currently we're still dealing with things. We had that late season frost, above average temperatures moving in. So it'll be really interesting to see how much it does continue to affect winter wheat. But overall, near average to slightly below average is anticipated. That wraps it up for us today. If you have any more questions or would like to talk about further, please feel free to reach out to us here at MinuteMan Weather. We would love to hear from you. Thanks for tuning in.